15th. Item 4.4.2, Deputy Mayor Nina Vipolci declares potential deemed direct/indirect pecuniary interest on agenda item 4.4.2 for the following reasons due to a family member.
Sorry, can I just clarify with the new system of declaring it at the beginning now? That's for Public Works, that part of the agenda. I should break that on there.
Okay, you got me.
Thank you. Okay, I got myself there.
So disregard the previous information.
Oh no, no, it's all the same, but our new process is to do it at the beginning of our day's worth of meetings, so I needed to clarify that.
Thank you very much. Item number 3.1, deputations, petitions, presentations from public meetings. Wasaga Beach Lion Club requesting a reduction to the bingo license fee. Gentlemen, would you like to take the chair?
Thank you.
Yes, by all means, sir. And ma'am. And the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Committee Chair Stockwell, members of the council and town staff. My name is David Lewis, and I am the current president of the Wasaga Beach Lions Club. With me today is Lion Suzanne Lacombe, a past president of the club and the person responsible for looking after our bingo licensing. I'm here today to ask for a reduction of the licensing fee from 2% to 1% relating to our Friday night bingo held at the Recplex. Excuse me. The Wasaga Beach Lions Club has been active in the community for over 50 years, and in that time has put hundreds of thousands of dollars back into the community to support projects such as the first ambulance, the original medical center, now the youth center, the Recplex, the arena, the prime time and daycare extension, and the library. In some cases, the amount doubled because the town was able to apply for grants based on our donations. More recently, we have supported the new traffic calming signs, the renovation of the Worsley Public School playground, and the purchase of a new $9,000 vision screening machine. We are currently working on a project to supply and install a flagpole and flag at the mouth of the river to warn people about the dangers of swimming in that area at a cost of approximately $3,500. I would also mention that we've supported Collingwood Hospital with over $140,000 in donations, and also donate to Royal Vic as well. Facilities that are used by virtually every member of our community at some point in time. Not all of these items are paid through the bingo account. They're only mentioned to show how deeply we are embedded in this community. We run approximately 50 bingos a year, providing entertainment and a night out to 150 people plus each time, and most of our patrons are seniors in the town. The extra 1% was originally designed to be a contingency in case extra work was required to verify or audit our submissions for the license. Since 2013, we have been supplying the town with audited statements from BDO at a cost of approximately $4,000 a year to the club, and as a result, we feel that the 1% now becomes redundant. There should not be any need for the town to put extra work into verifying our applications and supporting documents. As a result of our work with BDO, we have been able to secure 12-month licenses rather than the 3- and 6-month licenses that we were previously allowed. This would mean that we would have approximately $2,500 more to put back into the community to support needy and worthy organizations and projects. Once again, potentially doubling that amount if there's any grant matching available at all. In conclusion, we feel that the 1% is more than adequate for the work required, and would ask that the other 1% be dropped effective for 2018-2019 license. Thank you for your time and attention.
Mr. Belanger, you had requested a hold on this one?
No, just, yeah, hold the item. Thank you, Chair. You answered my question. I just didn't know what the 1% reduction represented in dollars, and certainly
approximately, that's a round number. But
any further question of the deputation, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Just to say, I was here when the discussions happened in years past, and I think we did review it in great length, and if it's been working out well and there are no issues, then I fully support carrying on with it.
thank you.
Further questions? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you've heard, the Lions does great work in our community and have for many, many, many years. I think we have a youth center today because the Lions paid to build that building in its entirety, and it worked great as a medical center when we desperately needed it back in the, I think, late 70s, early 80s, and since then has served a great purpose for a youth center. The Lions do great work in our community, and the thing I think is worth noting is that I think the vast majority of the funds they raise stay within our community, and I think that's extremely important. I support it 100%, and I would support a reduction of 1%. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? If not, I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Fulci, seconded by Councillor Eagle. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinated Committee received the request from the Wasaga Beach Lions Club for a reduction of the bingo license fees, and further that it be referred back to the Senior Municipal Law Enforcement Officer to review and to bring back a report to a future meeting. Call the vote. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Fulci.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor.
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Chair Stockwell.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. So it'll be referred to staff and be brought back, and at that time you'll be advised when it's back in front of us.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you
time.
very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item 3.2, unfinished business, signed bylaw review, January 2018 update with draft bylaw in March 2018, and that's to come. Right, item 3.3, other agency reports, the fire department monthly report. Chief, welcome.
Good morning, thank you.
The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. This will be very brief. 92 calls for service in February, which is closer to what our normal average is. January, as we talked about at the last meeting, was 148 calls, which was extremely high. Major event, nothing really happened other than the focus on the flood watch, which was, of course, in February instead of in March or April, which we're used to. But nothing really happened there, and what's left, and hopefully what we get from here as far as snow load doesn't create any issues in the spring for us. So, other than that, the naloxone and the epi, the epinephrine pens are on our trucks now, starting Monday of this week. So that's another tool in our toolbox for assisting our residents. So that's about all I have for today.
Any questions, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's worth noting our fire department was out, of course, this last month doing ice cold water training. And can you just tell us, Chief, how many of our firefighters are specifically trained in ice water? Is it ice water rescue?
Yes, ice water and water rescue, all of them, all the full-time and all the volunteer. Everybody's put through the training. Now we do have a couple that are not super strong swimmers, so they work from a shore-based position and assist that way, because that's you need people in every position. So we do swim tests before they go in the water. We go to the YMCA. We do swim tests with all our firefighters on an annual basis, and there are, like I say, a couple or three that become shore-based.
I bring this up, Mr. Chair, because as I brought up in the last meeting with respect to full-time fire departments versus full-time volunteer fire departments, it's important for the folks of Wasaga Beach to know how well trained our firefighters are and how important full-time firefighters are to our community. So I guess my only suggestion is maybe we should purchase some water wings just in case. Thank you, Chief.
Mr.
Thank you, Chair. Just to comment on the same thing, because we did a really good job on social media and in the paper warning people about the dangers of walking on the ice. But regardless of that, there were a number of reports and many observations where even on days which seem to be pretty mild, there were people out there. I haven't noticed signage or anything, but is there any recommendation? I know we have a long beach, but it was ridiculous how far some people were walking out on the ice on pretty mild days. And it puts themselves at risk, but it also put our first responders at risk. And I don't know what we can do to better deter people from just doing silly things, but.
So if I can answer that through you, Mr. Chair. So Josh is, he has a report, I don't know if it's on today's agenda with respect to signage on the beach to do with, it's more to do with the summer, no lifeguards in the dangerous swimming areas and so on. So Josh and I've met probably 3 or 4 times now over this signage, and we have also put together a sign that will go up in the winter to identify those dangerous conditions with respect to the ice. So it'd be a sign that would come down and then that would go up in place. But again, as I mentioned, we can only do so much. People have to take responsibility for themselves. The signage we're talking about is in beach area 1, and part of 2, I think. But so we've got 6 beach areas. We can't police it all, we can't sign it all, and we've also seen too, people don't always read, not everybody reads signs. It's gonna help. It's another tool to get the message out there, but we'll never fix everybody's.
Councillor Eagle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I sit and watch this every day. Somebody will pull up on the weekend and they're maybe not familiar with the beach or something like that, and they'll jump out of the car and 3 or 4 children, and they'll all run out on the ice and see how far they can go. And I sit there and shudder sometimes as to something's going to happen. As you know, in the past, something did happen. I don't know what you can do. I mean, it's a long beach, and there's a lot of people and there's a lot of kids that want to go out on that ice for some reason. And being a kid, once a long time ago, I probably would have done the same thing. But this is another reason why I think that these digital signs that we were talking about on the beach for alert and stuff like that, if they could be posted in 2 places on the beach on the digital signs, about the ice in the wintertime and stuff like that, I think would be a great way of getting the message out there on that signage. Thank you.
Any further questions to the chief? If not, I have a motion moved by Councillor Belanger, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fulci. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee does hereby receive the March 2018 Fire Department report for information. Mr. Clerk, call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Fulci.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Eagle.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Chair Stockwell.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Moving on to the 3.4 consent agenda. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 held. Okay. Through the first one that's being held is moved by Councillor Ego and seconded by Councillor Belanger. The community resolved the community Service Section of Coordinating Committee does hereby receive the March 15, 2018 consent agenda, items 3.4 through to 3.4.3, and that the recommendations contained therein be adopted as amended. So we will. Any question?
Yeah. Are you able to read out the ones that have been pulled, just so we know what we're voting on and what we're not?
Okay. 3.4.1, extension of sublease with Rogers Communications Telecommunications is held. B, municipal bylaw enforcement and licensing is held. 2B2, Georgian Triangle Humane Society, spay and neuter is held. C.1, recreation events and facilities report is held. And 3.4.3 E, OPP policing is held. And that's it. Mr. Mayor?
So, Mr. Chair, unless someone else has asked for C1 to be held, I received my answer, so I don't need to require that held myself unless someone else has pulled it as well.
C1. Let me get to it.
Which one was that?
What's the name on that one, Mr. Mayor?
So that is, it's 3.4.1C1, Recreation Events and Facilities Department.
I had,
in
Mr.
respect to
Belanger
report.
was held that.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know that I did
You hold
require.
that?
Which one's that? The check register?
Recreation events,
Yes.
you did.
And was there one on the check register as well?
Yes, the account, yes. Departmental accounts. There's one in there for accounts.
It was, I listed the, it's 022419.
Yeah, the accounts one.
That's both?
Yeah, the accounts, there's the resolution for accounts for him to speak to.
Here.
That's the joke.
Have a motion for balance. Yeah. As amended, you
Yep.
call it. We're calling the vote, other than those that have been held, this is balance.
Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Council Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Council Bray.
In favor?
Council Ego.
In favor?
Councilor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Chair Stockwell.
Favor.
Thank you. Motion carried by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, so, item 3.4.1 was held by the mayor, and that's extension of the sublease to Rogers. That's 134,
Correct.
Okay, that's item 3.4.1. Item I, extension of sublease with Rogers Communications Limited for telecommunications tower at Fire Station Number 1. Mr. Mayor, you held that, sir?
I did, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to indicate that, you know, we have seen in the past where other businesses in our community have come before us and asked for reductions in rent, and we have been very stringent on that, and being a large corporation like Rogers, to ask for reduction in rent, I cannot support that. If staff want to, would like that deferred to go back and talk, I'd be prepared to support that, but I cannot support a reduction in rent for this tower. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we have a motion to approve, is that correct, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, we do.
So, Mr. Mayor, would you like to put an amendment to that motion and refer it back?
If I could maybe just hear from the CAO with respect to whether or not staff would want to speak with Rogers further on this, or if I'll just move forward with a motion to not accept their offer.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So I've been in conversations with Rogers, and as outlined in the report, we're able to move them up $1,000 from their initial proposal. I'm happy to go back to them. The sense I got was that they weren't prepared to move much further than that, given, you know, their lease rates for comparable towers in the area. I'm happy to go back to them if that's what committee would like to express committee's concerns in that regard. But that was the information that I got, and I felt there was no further benefit of going back and forth. I would bring it forward to committee for consideration.
So, Mr. Mayor?
So, Mr. Chair, I guess, am I correct then, through you to the CAO, to understand that if they don't get the rate they want, maybe plus $1,000, they're going to take their tower down and move on?
Yeah, I would doubt that, Your Worship, but certainly, you know, the provisions of the lease are that there would be a notice period, et cetera, that the town would exercise its option. So that could be an outcome. I don't know if that's a possibility.
So, Mr. Clerk, the motion we have before us today is approval.
Correct.
And if that goes down, then the matter is dead.
Correct.
If there's a request for negotiations, further negotiations, there would have to be an amendment for a back.
Yeah, there's a separate motion to refer the matter back to staff for further conversation with Rogers.
Mr. Mayor?
So, Mr. CAO, I would be prepared, if someone would second a motion for staff to go back and speak to Rogers and try to negotiate this back to, again, I'm not looking for more, but I think a corporation the size of Rogers Communications, I can tell you that I use Rogers Communications and I pay very well for what I use. So I think for this corporation to be asking for a reduction for this cell site is in my opinion, is almost ludicrous. So I can't support it. So I would ask for a deferral, perhaps, for staff to go back and deal with this,
Do we
please.
have a seconder? Mr. Ego?
Yes, could I just add to that?
Yes?
When it comes to Rogers.
May I ask, first of all, are you prepared to
Yes,
second the motion?
yes, I'm gonna second.
Okay, fine, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree with the mayor. I don't recall me ever getting a discount from Rogers. Over the years, I've paid them thousands of dollars, so I'm sure that they've got the money to compensate for this.
Could we have a-
So that just the deputy clerk is preparing a motion, moved by his worship, seconded by Councillor Ego, to refer item 3.41 A back to staff for further review.
Further review.
We don't have to wait for that, we can call the vote.
Certainly, I could administer the vote, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So we're gonna call the vote on the amendment, which is a referral.
Referral, yes.
We know it's properly moved and seconded, and we know what the motion is, so rather than wait for the clerk to write it out, the CAO will be calling,
It's just coming off the printer there.
it's coming off the printer as we speak. Thank you very much. So, we'll get the sign, but I'll call it anyway. Okay, so moved by the mayor and seconded by Mr. Ego. Extension of sublease with Rogers Communications Limited for the telecommunication tower at Fire Station Number 1. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee refer item 3.4.1A, point 1 back to staff for further review with Rogers Communications Limited and report back to the committee at a future meeting. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Councillor Bray?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Councillor Ego?
In favor?
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor?
Chair Stockwell?
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, the next one is, thank you. The next one held is the mayor is holding item B, municipal law enforcement licensing. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chair, I think I've solved my issue, but I just wanted to speak to this with regards to the report before us, and I've received some more complaints over the last month with respect to signage from folks who have signs and are having issues with their signs through bylaw and the bylaws, rules and regulations around signs. And so I'm just looking for some clarification, Mr. Chair, on signs with respect to the last complaint I had was that the individual was told that his sign would have to be changed to a smaller size because it no longer was grandfathered because it was being changed. So I'm just looking for some clarification, Mr. Chair, on the grandfathering clause with respect to signage.
Fine, and I believe the director of the department is here to comment on that, sir. What was yours?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Without knowing the actual details of the complaint, and I don't need that in this forum, if a sign existed before 1996, it's essentially permitted a grandfathering because it existed before the bylaw existed. To my knowledge, everybody of recent vintage that has come to the department, or the department's had to go to them, has had a sign that perhaps they've had up for a while, but certainly not 1996. And as we were directed by council in September to clean up the signs in town, we have been going around and treating everybody fairly. All of the different types and types of businesses and signs associated with them. There are some grandfathered signs in town. There are some things that have been there a long time. And there are some signs that are larger than are permitted, and as new people come along and they want to put up the same size sign, they're told they can't. And so over time we've had to gradually go back to individuals and ask them to conform with the bylaw. So this isn't anything about changing the bylaw. The bylaw has not changed. So if there's a specific case of grandfathering that someone wants to bring to my attention and they can substantiate the sign existed before 1996, we can certainly look at that on a case-by-case basis.
Mr. Mayor, you had a further question?
I do. So just for clarification, so if the sign was erected before 1996, it's grandfathered, and let me start, I guess, Mr. Chair, by saying I absolutely support Council's decision in moving forward to cleaning up the signage issues in Wasaga Beach. I support that 100%. So if the sign was in place prior to 1996, it's grandfathered. What if that sign is changed afterwards? So let's say that sign is taken down and a new one is put up that is different, but in the same location, maybe the same size. Where does that fall?
So the principle of grandfathering allows a sign to be maintained, not the right to have anything there. So if the sign is 4 foot by 6 foot and advertises a particular business, it needs to be maintained. And if that business changes their logo and they're upgrading, you know, kind of their look, and they don't change the size of the sign and they don't change the message on the sign, essentially it's the same business, it's just kind of freshened up, that's fine. If it's changing the size, if it's a totally different business now wanting to use the same sign location, then it's a new business, it's not entitled to being grandfathered.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Gray?
Through you to the municipal law enforcement officer. If the sign is unsafe and a business wants to make it safe, but those changes, then the new the bylaw kicks in. So if they leave that sign as it is, but it's not safe because it's been in the ground 25 years and things are rotting or rusting, is it not in our best interest to work with them to have something similar in that location because it's always been there, rather than suddenly slamming the rules and completely changing their business appearance?
Again, I can't relate to a specific situation from the question. Certainly the sign bylaw has provision that the signs have to be maintained and safe. We also have a property standards bylaw that would apply as well. So if we feel a sign is unsafe, we will issue an order, either under the sign bylaw to either fix or remove your sign, or under property standards. It will most likely be the sign bylaw first, because that's the most applicable piece of legislation we have. So we'd certainly work with anybody to change a sign, though, to change it to a different type of sign, style of sign. A lot of signs originally were put right out of the property boundary. And if you're erecting a new sign, a different type of sign, then it's not a grandfathered situation. It's a set of rules that still existed in 1996 currently, and it requires a 10-foot setback. And a lot of that has to do with overhead hydro lines and things like that. So on a case-by-case basis, we would look at the whole, what somebody's asking us to do, and try to put a reasonable alternative in it. If we don't believe it complies with the sign bylaw, they have the opportunity to bring that to council, for council to review and make a variance to the bylaw. So there's a legal process that we can then use to say this is why that sign's allowed, but your sign is not allowed unless you want to go through the same process.
Everybody get that? Does everybody agree with that? Because I have some problems with it, I gotta tell you. I get calls from people who say, how come that property there can put up those signs and put up new signs? Maybe it's the same sign, but it's a different message because there's been a different tenant, and I can't do whatever I want to do. You get those calls. How do you handle it?
And, Mr. Chair, without knowing what problems you're referring to specifically, I can't really answer that. We have a challenge in town in that people go and put up signs without coming to ask the town first, and then if they're brought to our attention through another person who actually comes to us and asks for permission, and we go through the process and we say, well, you can have this, but you can only have it this size, based on the size of your building or whatever the answer is. the first thing out of almost everybody's mouth is, well, this person has this or this person has that. And some of those are older signs, and some of those are also ones that had no approvals in the first place, and they've gotten away with it for many years. They don't predate 1996. So it's, you know, we're trying to step carefully. If a business had a sign for the last 15 years, not 20, what we're trying to do right now, and we are behind bringing the sign bylaw forward too. I do apologize, but things have been challenging to get all of our ducks in a row for this year. What we're trying to do right now is, as we're looking at the new sign bylaw, we're trying to see how it will affect existing signs, and whether the existing sign that has been there for 15 years is okay. And then once the bylaws come to council and you have decided what the new set of rules are, then it's our intention to go forward and make everybody comply with the new set of rules.
I guess my question is, are your people proactive? If they're driving down the road and they see a sign that wasn't there yesterday, will they stop and deal with it, or do they wait for a complaint?
No, we're proactive with signage, and we're still being proactive. I identified a sign 3 weeks ago, and the business owner came in, or the business owner was in last week, the week before last, wasn't particularly happy because someone else had a sign, and we've told them that sign's actually been dealt with, and we're actually going to court over it. So we haven't taken some of the signs we have actioned, and there's actually court actions waiting for the court to decide. And people have chosen not to take them down. We do have the authority to go and take them down, but we're taking a more cordial approach and letting the court decide.
I guess there's a point where cordiality ends and enforcing bylaws begin.
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Chair, we are enforcing the bylaw. If council would like a zero tolerance and signs are done, that's certainly limits what we can do. We are trying to be as fair as possible. There are different situations for different people, and there are also different customers that we're dealing with that have different attitudes in compliance.
I'll just make one more comment and then I'll leave it to other speakers. But I think people that call me are fed up with the cordiality approach, and that they seem to say that there's some people get treated one way and other people get treated the other way. And that's always a request, that's always a concern of the general public. I understand that. But I would like to think that your people are very proactive. Is that fair?
I can tell you that we are proactive, Mr. Chair. We throw out about 2 sign sheds full a year. All these little signs that show up on trees on the sides of the road. The larger signs that are corporations, developers, and all the rest of those that over the years in some municipalities they go in and they put up signs carte blanche, and they have no permits required, or they don't apply and no one ever bothers them, and they come here, and I just had that recently with a developer, and they're not used to that process here. So we try to work with them so that down the road for the next 20 years that they're here, that we get compliance and that they understand the rules.
Mr. Melanche, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a question, and we're probably doing it already, thanks, Chair. But when a business renews their business license or anything, do they get anything or a package, just a reminder of what the signage requirements are referring them to, but that we keep that in front? Because certainly, in fairness, some of the entrepreneurs, smaller entrepreneurs, they come in and they spend money on a sign, and the sign's not compliant. So, it was their error, and it needs to be dealt with. But the best approach would be that they comply from day one, and that they don't spend money on a sign that is out of compliance.
Just to answer the councillor's question, Mr. Chair, we do have a handout that goes with the licensing to deal with signage. And it is also printed on the back of their renewal each year and highlighted in a box for them to
Did I have a question over here? Was it you, Councillor Smith?
Yes, I just did. Don't know if we're done with that conversation.
Okay. That's it? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I noticed in your report with the signage complaints, I guess, there are some that are compliance achieved, sign removed, and these other open ones that say open, am I to assume that they're going to court, or what's the status of the ones that are still open?
There are some of those that are matters that weren't resolved and are going to court, and there's other ones that we've given them time to comply. There's a number of them that have given the same cordiality that we've given other people. And at the time of writing this report, we had a little push on signs again, because as we deal with one individual for a sign, they bring 3 more to our attention, so then we go out and we have to deal with those 3 more, and then those people bring 3 more to our attention, so it's kind of a never-ending revolving door for us.
And just one more question, if I may, Mr. Chair, regarding that is, are these repeat, are any of these repeat to the same business, or are they in different ones? I mean, if you have a complaint on a Monday and you get another complaint on a Friday, is that treated as one complaint or 2?
So, Mr. Chair, for the purposes of our recording, if we receive multiple complaints about the same issue, we treat it as one complaint. We do log all 3 complaints, but on here it'll be shown as one occurrence file, and we'll refer to the other complaints so that they're all resolved. When one's resolved, treat it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I have a motion signed, properly moved and seconded, moved by Mr. Councillor Ego, seconded by Councillor Belanger. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee recommends to Council that it receive the March 15, 2018 Municipal Law and Enforcement Department's monthly activity report for the period January/February 2018 for information only. Clerk, will you call the vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Chair Stockwell.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. The next item is B2, which is Georgian Triangle Humane Society Spay and Neuter Program Review. 2 members held that. First of all was the mayor. Mr. Mayor, you held that, sir?
No, I don't recall holding that one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, fine. Mr. Belanger?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Maybe I had spoken to Doug, and maybe he has brought the information to the table, but what my question was is that they had reported their activity over a 2-year period, and some of the costs associated with the funding they're requesting is directly related to the number of cats that are dealt with, and so I just asked if that number could be broken down over year to year. To we had a serious issue in our town, and I believe that hopefully, and I think it read into the information, that as we are actively addressing this problem, there should be fewer instances to deal with, so that I believe it was at some point that it should become a requirement that we produce less funding. So I just wanted to know if there was a big reduction in spayed neuters in the second year as opposed to reporting them both together.
Thank you. For you, Mr. Chair. So there were 2 parts to the program. So the TRAPS spay and neuter program, and I have provided you the individual reports, and my apologies, I should have attached them to the actual report. So the TRAPS spay and neuter was very similar in captures for the 2 years. It I think reflects that the society is working in areas where the problems exist. And there are a number of spots in town that they haven't got to, so I see the TRAPS spay and neuter continuing to. I think it has two functions, or 2 limiting factors. One's their volunteer and their ability to capture cats, and then locating new colonies. Over time, with the TRAPS spay and trap, neuter, and release program, they're reducing the amount of cats in the area that are able to breed. Obviously, it will reduce the population of feral cats. And then the other half of their program, which is providing discounted services to members of our community that are financially challenged and need their cats spay or neutered, who also have their cats running outside that can breed either with a feral cat and they have a litter at home, or their cats impregnating a female feral cat, and there's another litter born. with the both programs, I think over time we'll see a reduction in the number of feral cats for sure. And the human, the number of pets people have probably will never change.
Yeah, thank you. My biggest thing was just as every year that they report the numbers individually so that we
And my
have a
apologies, I didn't make that clear. They
Yeah.
have, and I have provided a copy of both reports. I just summarized them to make it, I thought, more palatable, just to say that we're looking at this 2 years in instead of 1 year in. I was to have brought back a report last fall, but the report, or at the end of the first fall, but it wasn't available till February of 2017.
Yeah, the other thing I mentioned to Doug, and it's really not something you can enforce, but there are quite a number of people that I'm aware of that have a cat that is neither spayed or neutered, and they allow that cat to roam, and so that's a very, now I guess it could be captured, but pretty impossible to enforce that.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, did you have a comment?
Just that I think it's a great program, and I can tell you, our first year of council, I was receiving calls and emails and with respect to feral cats and the problems that was occurring. People couldn't even sit on their deck in some cases because of the smell. And there's no doubt, as I go through the report that Doug's just handed us and see the amount of feral cats that have been captured, spayed or neutered, and the amount of kittens that aren't being born because of that, I think it's proof positive that the program works, and I support it wholeheartedly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further comments? Motion, moved by the mayor and seconded by Councillor Eagle. Resolved that the Community Service Section of the Coordinated Committee recommends to Council that the Georgian Triangle Humane Society, subject to annual budget approval, receive up to a maximum of $3,000 annual administrative support fee for the Wasaga Cats Spay/Neuter Assistance Program to a combined limit with the Trap/Neuter and Release Program expenditures of $6,000 a year. Clerk, can you call the vote, please?
Thank you. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Councillor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Ego?
In favor.
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor.
Chair Stockwell?
Favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. Next item I have is the Recreation Events and Facilities Report, C1, and Mr. Boulanger, you held that, sir?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just held up for one reason, to sort of a congratulatory. I thought the Snowman Mania weekend was very good. I heard a ton of positive comments. I shared a couple of suggestions that residents had put forward, but I thought this was a very robust report related to recreation events, and also it was very encouraging. I see the volunteer list has jumped up again, and so all of those things are very positive. So congratulations to our team over there.
So I have a motion moved by Councillor Boulanger and seconded by Deputy Mayor Byfolchi. A resolve that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee does hereby receive the Recreation Events and Facilities Department Report, Monthly Activity Report as information. Clerk, can you call the vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi?
In favor?
Councillor Bray?
In favor?
Excuse me, Councillor Eagle?
In favor.
Councillor Smith?
In favor.
Mayor Smith?
In favor.
Chair Stockwell?
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Next item I have is 3.4.2, Departmental Accounts. Recommendations that departmental accounts for the month of February 2018, as reviewed by the Community Service Section of the Coordinated Committee, are hereby confirmed. And Mr. Boulanger, you had that held as well?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just had a question, Chair, to, I don't know, did Doug leave?
No.
Oh, there he is, okay. On check number 022419, it was amount $20,340, and it was listed as a priority standard cleanup. And I did get the information I needed on that. It was the demolition, and I thought that was, and I wasn't sure of the process because I thought that would be charged to the landowner, but I've been since told it's put on their tax roll. But I wanted to take the opportunity. At an earlier meeting, it was indicated that there were 5 demolitions scheduled. And certainly there's, I think some of the demolitions that are scheduled happen to be in a very prominent location in our town, and it seems to be a very slow process. And I just wondered if we could hear, if you know of where we sit with the other 4 demolitions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in late fall, we put out requests for demolition bids for 5 properties. Of those 5 properties, one property owner who owns 2 of those properties or associated with 2 of those properties demolished one on their own and improved the property. So it's property standards order. You either fix it or you remove it. Some were obviously beyond repair, so there was an order put on the sales office out on Mosley, and they have since brought it up to it's probably 95% done. They have some work they have to finish this spring with the weather. A cottage beside it was demolished. It was no longer there. And we then had a fire damaged structure on Glen Eaton, which was there for almost a year from the date of the fire before we actually could get it demolished. And that was way beyond the municipality's purview at that time. It was to be raised by the homeowner and rebuilt, and that process was well underway in the summer, and then it fell off the rails. So we had to jump in and finish that process. So that one actually hasn't come up the check register, but it will come up through and actually go onto the tax roll as well and be transferred back out. So the town temporarily pays for it until it gets transferred to the tax roll. We have another structure on 52nd Street South, which was demolished recently, and that's the item line that you're referring to for this check. We went through. We had I just read the bid sheets here. So we had approximately 12 bids on that property, and the lowest bid was the successful bidder there. And so that one has been demolished, and we currently have one outstanding property that we've been speaking with the property owner about. Again, they have the right to fix the property or demolish it, and there are some negotiations, the property owner in potential sale of that property, and that could be part of those negotiations as to what has to be done on the property. The orders themselves are legal and binding, so no matter who owns the property, they have to fix it or demolish it. And it's really just the town's, we're actually, to set a meeting, I was just requested from the CAO before I left on a short holiday to set up another meeting to set an end date where if we have no progress, we're going to remove it.
Okay, thank you.
That's normally our process.
That was going to be my next schedule, is if there was a timeline for these orders, because I believe the one in question has been, that order's been out there for a significant amount of time. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. The last item I have held. Oh no, I got to read the motion. Thank you, sir. Moved by Mayor Smith. And seconded by Deputy Mayor Fulci. Resolved that the department accounts for the month of February 2018 is reviewed by the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee are hereby confirmed.
Thank you. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Fulci.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith. In favor. Chair Stockwell.
Favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. The last item I have held is item under other matters 3.4.3, item E, OPP policing, and again, Mr. Blanchard.
Thank you, Chair. Seem to be active on community service section. Yeah, I have an ongoing concern. I've brought this up prior, and And I must say, I kind of missed the level of communication that we had with our OPP detachment in the past. But there is a trend related to traffic violations that is alarming. Accidentally, I got the November year-end report pulled. We thought we were getting the full year, but for last year, traffic violations were 8,594, and this year, and 7,656, which isn't too bad. But for instance, November was 805 and dropped to 328. And if you look at the report for January, again, it dropped almost by 75%, and this has been a trend. Collisions are also increasing, and property damage. So my concern is, for whatever reason, it would appear that we are not enforcing traffic violations have we done in the past, and it's having an impact. If people feel that there's less scrutiny, I guess they drive a little faster through our streets, and different things happen. The other thing that is a concern, and I can tell you that over time I have had a tremendous number of residents talk to me about the drug trade in our town. They've even so much as told me and identified spots where they believe that transactions are happening on a regular basis. And our number of arrests and convictions related to drugs is practically non-existent. It's just, it just seems amazed to me that the general public seems to be very aware of activity, yet we just don't, we're just not there. And so I think we just need to potentially invite our OPP to the table, and maybe get some information as to what they believe is happening.
Well, Councillor, if it was standing, when I came on this council, the OPP were here at every meeting. CAO, that has changed at their request, or has it just changed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's basically at their request, to use your words. Basically, the detachment commander indicated that he would no longer be attending the Community Services Committee, as he is not required under the Police Services Act to attend. The town participates in a Community Policing Advisory Committee with the 3 other communities that form part of the Harmonia West detachment, and he would present his report and respond to questions in that forum. So that forum meets quarterly. The mayor and I sit on that forum, and so he indicated that he would be adhering to the act and be addressing comments in that forum.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Belanger?
Well, that answers how we got there, but to the fact that we're not communicating on a regular basis, I guess. But
well, I guess we are, but through the committee. Well, that's what I heard.
Yeah, well, I haven't heard too much dialogue on this, and I know I brought it up on 2 previous occasions in meetings. So,
Mr. Mayor, could you help us on this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do have a CPAC meeting next
27th or 28th or something.
28th, the next week or so, Mr. Chair, and certainly it's on my list to bring this particular issue up at that meeting. As the CAO has indicated, it wasn't a request, I would say, from the OPP. We were told that the OPP would not be attending these meetings anymore because it wasn't a requirement. And although I don't necessarily agree with that, it is what it is. And so we go through these stats that they send to us every month, and we encourage council with concerns like this to bring it to mine or George's attention, so we can bring it up at the CPAC meeting and see where we go from there. But I don't believe we're the only community that would like to see a little more communication again between us and the OPP.
Councillor Bray?
Thank you. Through the community policing, and perhaps through maybe the CPAC meeting minutes, they could maybe be included in circulation in the community services. So I know community policing is, or maybe Ron could give us an update.
I have no idea about the CPAC. It's never discussed at the community policing.
So then maybe we could add the CPAC and minutes to community services agenda to give us a more complete picture of what's happening. Because I didn't know that there was a CPAC.
Councillor Eagle, you had a question?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I just think that this is such an important matter that Councillor Belanger has brought up in discussing it, that I think that under the circumstances that this town pays an awful lot of money for policing in Wasaga Beach. And I think out of courtesy, I think that maybe the CAO or the mayor should contact the police and ask them if they would please make a representation at least once a year before the board, that we could have a discussion about things of this matter that is a great concern. I know that it's going to be brought up, but I think that this is a very important issue, and I think that out of courtesy that the police department should appear and give us some explanations as to why.
Mr. Mayor, you had the final vote.
Yes,
Final
Mr. Chair,
request.
just to the point that Councillor Bray makes a good point. I made a note of it. The OPP keep the minutes on these meetings, and so we can request that they provide those minutes to us for our community services. Now,
Mayor, you had a question?
whether they will or not, it's another story, but we'll request it.
Deputy Mayor, you had a question?
Just more of a comment than anything. I don't think the commander would have a problem coming once a year to present, but may I suggest that any specific topics could be forwarded on so that they can come prepared to present on those, just so there's no point in him coming, asking questions, and maybe he doesn't have the answer that you want at that time.
Okay, can we move on?
Can I make just one more comment if we're...
One last comment, is that what you're
Because the
saying?
mayor had indicated he's going to a meeting. It's secondary to the health and safety, but again, Councillor Eagle mentioned that the cost of policing is significant and increasing. And there is revenue, my understanding is there is revenue derived by traffic, so it's secondary to the health and safety of our residents. But when you get a 75% reduction, I have no idea what the reduction in revenue is. It would be nice to know what the impact of that is on the municipality as well.
Okay, I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Foci, seconded by Councillor Belanger. Resolved that the Community Service Section of Coordinating Committee recommended to Council that it receive the January 2018 OPP Policing Statistical Reports for information. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Chair Stockwell.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries and a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
So that is the agenda, and we're now going to a 10-minute break.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to show you what's going on.
Jim gave it up a couple of years ago, didn't go for it. But he was ready.
Okay, we'll call this section of today's meeting, Public Works section, back to order. I will remind everyone of my pecuniary interest, which was declared earlier. We have no deputations, petitions, presentations, or public meetings. Under unfinished business is a community transportation grant program, January 18th. Under other agency reports, Wasaga Beach drinking water system, which is moved by Mayor Smith, seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the Public Works section of the Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change, MOECC, Wasaga Beach Drinking Water System Inspection Report dated February 27th, 2018 for information. We do have several people in the back row that would be happy to answer questions, I'm sure, if there's any from the committee. Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's very important to note that our Director of Public Works isn't here today because he's probably out celebrating. If you recall last year, I think we missed the mark by 0.1%, and Kevin was devastated. But it is good to see other staff here, and of course our partners from Aqua. You know, to get 100% nowadays, Madam Chair, I think you have to exceed 100% when they're going through your facilities. There's no doubt in my mind, and so this is a testament and a good story for the people of Wasaga Beach, and I hope the folks understand what a great job our partners Aqua are doing, and certainly our staff here at the town that look after our water and wastewater systems for us. This is a phenomenal report once again, and kudos to them. So I would say, Council or Committee, these folks deserve a big round of applause. Thank you so much. Job well done.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Blanchet.
Yeah, I'd like to add a few things. I actually pulled this. I said this should be the waterworks section, this coordinated committee, because there's a lot on our water. But so many people take quality water for granted, and I would even make a recommendation that from these reports that we should have our communications officer draft up something, because there's just so much there. People don't realize the inventory and the complexity of the infrastructure that we deal with. Inevitably, every year we have some people that complain about the small hikes in water, even though we still have a gap between the planned infrastructure replacement over time and what we have in reserve. And it's so important that they understand that. Over and above the fact that we got a perfect score on 680 inspection points, the other thing that I thought was outstanding is we had a 14% reduction year over year in water usage, and we also, the average daily usage was only at 19.6 of capacity, which speaks to that we're in very, very good shape as a municipality. So again, just a huge congratulations, because it's, I think people think this is just a real simple process, but as you skim through about 300 pages of instructions and everything else, it's outstanding. Thank you.
Councillor Rico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question, and I get this phone call last couple of weeks, as a matter of fact, especially from a couple that just moved here from Wasaga. And it's to do with the quality of the water in some areas that they say is undrinkable, and the smell of the water. And I know the water is safe and everything like that there, but is there some reason for this? And if there is there something that could be done about it?
Who would like to take that one? We're all looking at you. Sure, please join us at the table.
Thank you. When it comes to water quality, it can be, one person's perception of it can be completely different than another's. We do a lot of monitoring at the plant, and I know the town does a lot of work out in the distribution, flushing mains, and I believe they've added some hydrant automated flushers. So generally when you get complaints about high chlorine, it's actually the residual starting to drop out in the system, not in an adverse, but it is starting to reduce. So what the operators would do is flush the mains in that area to improve the water quality. So if there's particular areas, I would suggest if we can communicate that through to the distribution crew, then they can increase their flushing.
Okay, because as I say, this is in 2 areas where at this, and in fact, I was at one of the houses the other night, and I couldn't believe the quality of the water as compared to the quality of water what I've got. I mean, the quality of water that I've got is absolutely pristine, and that these people, you couldn't drink it.
Discoloration or?
Both discoloration and smell.
So it is, the water source is from deep drilled wells, so, and there is naturally occurring iron in the well. So we sequester using sodium silicate, which it doesn't remove the iron, it just keeps it in suspension. So again, if there's areas where there's, if there's a dead end or just maybe poor circulation, the retention time in that section of distribution could be too long and it's starting to fall out. So again, more
So what
frequent
do you
flushing.
suggest they do?
More frequent flushing or looping the systems.
Yeah, I think like any
Oh.
issue, I think if a resident has a concern, they really should be contacting our public works staff on that, and they will, I'm sure, get a quick answer, or they will be passed over to
Yeah,
our
depending on the
opera team.
complaint, if it comes to us or the town, we'll sort of pass it back to whoever can deal with that problem.
Madam Chair, I agree with you, it's just that I thought the people were here that could answer the question. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, and I think to Councillor Belanger's point about it is a good news story and it should, our communications people should be on it. I believe they already are on it and they're waiting for us to discuss it this morning. We do have our media in the room, so I'm sure it will be out there soon. Is there any other comments on this? Okay, already read the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Chair by Fulci.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed. Thank you.
The next is moved by Mayor Smith, seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the Public Works section of the Coordinating Committee does hereby receive the 2017 Wasaga Beach Water Supply System Annual Report as required by Section 11 of Ontario Regulation 17003 for information. Any discussion on this item? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Or Chair by Fulci.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Next is moved by Mayor Smith, seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the Public Works section of the Coordinating Committee does hereby receive the 2017 summary report for the Wasaga Beach Well Supply System for information. Any discussion on that item? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Chair by Fulci.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
It's moved by Mayor Smith, seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the Public Works section of the Coordinating Committee does hereby receive the Systems Verification Audit Report for the Town of Wasaga Beach Water Distribution System as issued by SAI Global dated February 15th, 2018, and further that the Public Works section of the Coordinating Committee does hereby receive the Systems Verification Audit Report for the Town of Wasaga Beach Water Supply System as issued by SAI Global dated February 22nd, 2018. Any discussion on this item? And I'll look to staff if there's something that we're skimming over that you feel that you want to address, raise that hand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Chair by Fulci.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Next is our consent agenda. It's moved. You're gonna, okay, I'll just get somebody else to sign. Just move that.
Oh, somebody else has to.
The mayor left the room, so I need
Oh,
somebody
I
else to
see,
move it.
sorry. You're replacing the mayor. Oh, go to your head.
It's Moved by Councillor Boulanger, seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the Public Works section of the Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the 2017, nope, sorry, wrong one. Or is it? Nope. Moved by Councillor Boulanger, seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the Public Works section of the Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the 2017 Annual Performance Report for the Water Pollution Control Plant for information. Any discussion? Okay. That's the one I was thinking of.
Thank you. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger,
In favor?
Councillor Bray,
In favor?
Councillor Ego,
In favor?
Councillor Smith,
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell,
Favor.
Chair by Folchi.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 6 in favor and 0 opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, see me struggling with my pen. Thank you. Broke on me. Next is the consent agenda. So it's moved by Councillor Boulanger, seconded by Councillor Bray. Be it resolved that the Public Works section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the March 15th, 2018 consent agenda items 4.4.1 through to 4.4.3, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted as amended. We have 2 items pulled, 4.4.1 dealing with the line painting and pavement markings, and 4.4.1, again, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, Water and Wastewater Services in Simcoe County. Is there any other items to be pulled? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger,
In favor?
Councillor Bray,
In favor?
Councillor Ego,
In favor?
Councillor Smith,
In favor.
Mayor Smith. Sorry, Madam Chair, my apologies. Very important call. What are we looking at here?
This is the consent agenda.
Thank you. In favor? Thank you. Councillor Stockwell,
Favor.
Chair by Folchi.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
What's your call to the Senate?
So the first one is moved by Councillor Bray, seconded by Councillor Boulanger. Be it resolved that the Public Works section of Coordinated Committee does hereby recommend to Council to award the traffic line painting and pavement marking contract number PW 2018-3 to Midwestern Line Stripping Inc. for the prices stipulated in the tender bid. And I believe Mayor Smith, you pulled this?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question to staff and a comment. Last year, as I said, I believe the CA was aware of this. I received many calls and concerns about traffic speed and traffic going the wrong way on one-way streets on River Avenue Crescent, specifically by a business person there, and on Glenwood Drive. And we've worked with Kevin, and they've done a great job to, I don't know how much more signage we could put up there, but I did have an email conversation with Mr. Rue as well on this, and he's assured me they're going to be looking at that even closer. So that was my point. I guess my question is, and I believe I asked this 2 years ago, and that was the quality of the paint that they're painting lines with. It just doesn't seem to last. And I know the last time I asked this question, I think the next level of paint quality was significantly more. Have we looked at that again recently, and is it still significantly more? Is it something we should be considering so that these lines are lasting longer and we're having maybe to do it less?
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, issue with the line painting, the more expensive stuff that goes down is actually permanent. And you'll see it some places in town here, usually the stop bars. Problem is that the bead in it, once it gets wiped off the top, it doesn't reflect. So there are products out there that have different textures, but they are much more expensive, sort of a poly background. Depending upon what they are, like your yellow lines are usually the primary ones where you'll see when you're driving on the highways. They're the bright ones, the white ones. If you catch the right way on your car reflection of your headlights, sometimes they light up, sometimes they don't. Here we usually use a paint that has a glass bead in it, and if they're put down by a truck, the truck actually has a blower, blows off the sand, drops the paint, drops the bead. And if it has time to dry, then the bead will stay in it, but as the traffic drives over it, it comes off. And any product like that, especially here, it's going to get sandblasted. So the value for $1 of actually using the higher end you're not going to get the value worth. The painting that we do on an annual basis, if you do the price between the price point of the stuff they claim will last 5 years, it won't. It's just that you got so much traffic in the tourist area, which was pretty much the main complaint. They wear off. It's tough to get the paint to stick to the asphalt, and there are products that work, some that don't, but they're site specific. But it is very expensive to go up to the next, like you're talking 200-300% increase.
Okay, and I think Mr. Pinsevere would like to add.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to that. We have looked in the price difference recently, and that durable is typically like 4 times as much as the paint we use. So it is a significantly more expensive.
Okay.
Clearly answers my question, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I've already read the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Eagle.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Chair by Fulci.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
And the next one is moved by Councillor Bray, seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the Public Works Section of Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the letter from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs dated February 26, 2018 regarding the water and wastewater service in Simcoe County for information. And I believe Mayor Smith pulled this as well.
No, I did, Madam Chair, but I received my answer on that yesterday, so again, my apologies.
Okay, is there any other discussion on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor?
Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Councillor Eagle.
In favor?
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair by Fulci.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. And we will adjourn this portion of the meeting for 10 minutes until the next recording secretary comes.
I don't think
So I
it's
can
serious.
call the meeting.
I don't think they have that.
Alrighty.
When you're that
Yeah, because Nick,
I think we're just, not sure whether the mayor's going to join us enough, is going to join us at all, so, we'll welcome him if he does get back before the meeting. This portion of the agenda is dealt with, so I'm just calling, our coordinated committee meeting back to order under the Development Services section. We have one item pulled, and that is the very last one. And that is Public Works Engineering Technologist Development Project Status Report, March 7th, 2018. And 2 people pulled that. So we have no deputations, petitions, presentations, public meetings. Unfinished business, there's a few items on here. And, well, I see Mr. Herron here. Doug, can you just give us a quick update on the bylaw official amendment that's been on there since 2014, where we're at with that? It's on the unfinished business, Z0914, OP0214. Third one down.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The short form for that application is called the TAC proposal, and that was brought forward, and it has to do with the use of commercial accommodation cottages for long-term affordable housing. There was an application brought forward to amend the OP and amend the zoning bylaw to convert in a general manner some of those properties, and then there were site specifics as well. The actual applications have been not closed, but there's been a new approach to address those issues, and at some point, for instance, we've worked with the county to get the 99 units, which is one way of filling or creating new units. Also, through the new official plan update, we're looking at generalized policies to deal with affordable housing issues, and so that includes inclusionary zoning criteria, that includes changes of use. It also includes looking at those commercial accommodation properties and putting in land use planning designations that would encourage the free market to address some of those uses as well. So the original files, the OP and zoning file from 2014, have deliberately not been closed until, and we don't want to do that until we see resolution through this new process, through the OP update, and some of the work we're doing through the county as well, who have provincial authority to deal with affordable housing in Wasaga Beach.
Thank you. I just, my comment regarding this, I don't know if anybody else has a comment, is that this was done with the previous council, I believe. Deputy Mayor, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and it started under the previous council. And with it sitting here 2014 in September, it would be nice to at least put a little update in there maybe, because somebody reading this wondered my question, and I just want everybody up to date anyway.
I was just going to say it started with the last council, and I think it's been explained before that the election came, it was put on hold, and I believe Councillor Bray just recently put forward a motion that we get this all started again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Councillor Bray?
Yeah, just wanted to point out that notice of motion came forward to December's council. Okay. And I believe our CEO is working on a report to bring back to committee of the whole.
Yes. So, yes, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, just while we're talking about affordable housing, because I'm not sure, there's one item in general government that I had a question about, granny suites. And, you know, I've read a fair bit about what's going on in Ottawa and different municipalities, and I probably should be more familiar. We probably have a policy, but is that being looked at on the official plan update as well?
The official plan is looking at the legislation from the province that allows for second units as of right, without the need for a rezoning. So, for instance, a single detached house could have a second unit applied to it, and the owner doesn't need to get a zoning. The municipality is required to allow it as of right, which we've done. And as you filter down to what that really means in application, is a second unit could be a basement apartment, or it could be a division of the existing dwelling in some way to allow for another unit to go in. We allow it in singles, semis. We allow it in some townhouses where there's sufficient parking. The town has decidedly not allowed granny flats. And the reason for that is that there's a long history in Wasaga Beach, being a tourism town, of bunkies in the backyard being rented out for commercial short-term stays. And the difficulty with that is that it allows for the insertion of a recreational vacation use into a residential area. And it's caused conflict in the past, because people are on vacation, they want to have fun. And the idea is that that fun should be relegated to a tourism area. So currently the town of Wasaga Beach does not allow for granny flats, which are separate units typically placed in the rear yard of a property or somewhere on the property, but a structure separate from the main dwelling on the site. And that's the reason why we haven't done it. Having said that, the legislation is quite clear that granny flats should be allowed. So through our official plan update, we're actually looking at that to determine, is the town absolutely required to accommodate for granny flats, notwithstanding the history of the abuse of such uses for tourism uses.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, just on that subject, I guess there's a big difference between, in my mind anyway, between when you talk about granny flats and as an outbuilding and a granny flat in maybe the lower level of a home, where the kids live upstairs and the in-laws live downstairs. And I think in other municipalities, the question is that they're not barred, but the way they limit them is they limit them saying you can't have two kitchens. You've never looked at that?
Yeah, so the two kitchens is was a measure that was applied before the second units as of right legislation came in. So a measure of habitability or a dwelling is, does it have a separate entrance, does it have a separate kitchen, and does it have a separate sleeping area, which means it's a unit in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we do use that as a measure to determine whether or not it is a second unit currently.
So is that legal?
Yes, in our current legislation, our current zoning bylaw, it is absolutely permissible. In fact, the town was heralded by, I think it was CMHC, for our approach to actually promote these uses in Wasaga Beach. And we did that because there is a dearth of affordable housing in town, and it was a solid way that we could secure safe, affordable housing. So what we look to is does it meet fire code, and does it meet building code, and we've amended the bylaw to allow it as of right. If we look at the granny flats, the idea with a granny flat, and the term granny flat actually started in Australia, and the idea was that it was specifically for a relative in the backyard.
Member of the family.
Yeah, but operationally, we cannot regulate for occupancy, who occupies. We don't have the legal authority to do that. So the idea is that a granny flat would provide for more affordable housing in the form of a smaller separate unit in the rear yard, if we apply it to a single attached property. But we would not have any control over who would occupy it. And the concern, of course, is that history would continue to repeat itself, and the granny flat would be rented out on a short-term basis for tourism use. And we see that through...
But that's a standalone building, an outbuilding, so to speak.
Correct.
Yeah. What I was asking is, you're not limiting granny flats in the main household.
No, absolutely not. We're promoting them, in fact.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. One more question from Councillor Blanchet. I think we've lost the point of me bringing it up. I just wanted to, if you could put an update on there, just a little sentences where that is. I'm just concerned people looking at the agenda are going to see that as something we haven't looked at since 2014, and just to put a sentence on there like where the status is.
I'll leave my last question until we get into that something comes to council more specific to this issue.
Thank you.
And if I could add, we have been conscious of the items that have been on that list, and we are actually working with Ms. Corallo with her application. We've had discussions with her this week, in fact, to try to ratify her application one way or another.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I think that's done with this. Thank you. I'll move along in the agenda. Other agency reports, we have none. Consent agenda, I've already noted the item that's to be pulled is 5.4.3E. So I'll read the motion here. For the general one, resolved that the Development Services Section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the March 15, 2018 consent agenda items 5.1 through 5.4.3, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted. That was moved by Councillor Belanger and seconded by Deputy Mayor Fulci.
So, Madam Chair, I was the one that held the item, and I can assume you're voting on everything but the item that I held.
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
fine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Belanger.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Fulci.
In favor.
Councillor Bray.
In favor.
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair Smith.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 6 in favor and 0 opposed.
So we'll move to the item that's been pulled. That is, what's the number again? Is, thank you, 5.4.3. That was pulled by the mayor and Councillor Stockwell.
So the mayor's not here.
That's correct.
So, Madam Chair, I just pulled the item for some further explanation because I was a little confused. I'm specifically looking at the list of information under engineering development projects list, active development files, and then it gives you a whole whack of stuff that we've gone back over the years. And the two that I was concerned about, I really didn't understand. First one is on page 5 of 19. If you look at go by the list, then go to page 5 of 19. Down the bottom of the page, it says 818 Mosley Street Plaza, previous Giant Tiger. Now, when I read that, I read that the owner is a numbered company, and then it goes on to say the last site review was conducted in January 10th, 2008, which is a long time ago. And then it goes on to say a site review was undertaken by Public Works staff on March the 11th, 2013, at which time it was confirmed that the noted deficiencies in 2008 had not been addressed. Staff has determined that the town still holds $2,300 under the original site plan with the numbered company. Staff to get legal opinion from town solicitors. So if this is the old Giant Tiger site in the plaza with the post office, right? If there's problems with it, what confused me is that recently we agreed to have a school go in there, food bank to go in there, and a couple of other uses. And I guess the question I have for staff is, you know, that doesn't wash in my mind, and maybe you could explain to me what that report says.
Mr. Herron, would you go ahead and take this one?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we also have the manager of engineering services in the room, who's had some experience with the file as well. My recollection is that the outstanding works were minor works that had to do with a curb at Duncarron and at the entrance to right where the post office is. And what it could well be that comment may require some update.
If I could, Madam Chair, actually the deficiency was to do with the cart corral for the Giant Tiger and some parking stalls that they weren't providing as many as were required for that use. And frankly, now that it's not being used, they don't need the cart corral, they don't need those many stalls, so there is no real deficiency under the current use. So there's no need to draw the securities to fix something for lands that are no longer being used as a shopping center. So it's, as the bottom sentence says, the only outstanding item is for us to ascertain who should get the money back. The number of companies gone bankrupt. There's no one to give the money back to. We've got $2,300. Who do we give it back to? So it's just a matter of staff determining through legal opinion, what do we do with this money, and we can take that item off the list.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
there's
all
no
comes down.
deficiencies?
No.
Not the way,
There was
not given the usage that has been approved?
Correct.
All right, that's fine.
Otherwise, we'd use the money to fix it.
Yeah, okay. And you worry about where the money's going. The other item on the same list was on page 13 of 19 at the bottom. Cooper, 285 Deerbrook Drive, site plan. Gilbert Cooper. A memo was sent to the planning staff on December 16, 2011, recommending a security reduction of the works that have been completed to date. A reduction was subsequently given to the developer. Various internal grading and services work remain outstanding. Property has changed ownership. Staff will contact the owner to coordinate a meeting to discuss completing the site plan. So that was 2011, and here we are in 2018. Could you just put into words that I can understand what that's saying?
Actually, Madam Chair, I'm just going to step away from the table. This is a property that I sold to this individual, so I think it's best if I just step back.
Oh. So, I'm sorry.
I used to own this property. I no longer
Oh, I
own
see.
it.
I'm sorry.
but
I
think
thought
should
you were
step
saying
back.
you were sold it. You're an agent.
No, no.
No. Okay, so I just don't understand what the clause is saying again.
So if I could, Madam Chair, again, these were deficiencies that were really minor in nature, but they were such that we couldn't release the remaining securities. We had reduced by the majority of securities. There was still some grading to be done, and just frankly, since it has changed ownership, Public Works engineering staff have not coordinated a meeting with the new owner. I've never personally met the owner. The securities are still held. And I guess based on your comments, yeah, I should certainly make an effort for this season to meet with them and take a review what is still required and get that addressed. It wasn't anything critical or harmful. That was something that we were pushing to get done right away. And as I said, we just haven't had the opportunity to reach out to the new owner.
So again, you'll meet and you'll tally it up and report back.
Yeah, and we'll update it on this, correct. Once it is fixed up and we can release the final securities, then we can close the file.
Okay. The rest of them seem to be up to date. They were there in 2016, 2017, 2018. Is that correct?
Through Madam Chair, yeah.
No other problems?
Nothing that comes to mind right away. No, they are more active than those two. You're right, Councillor, that we should bring those up to date, those two items.
Councillor Blanchet.
Well, just a question, if there's a change of ownership and there's still securities being held, who gets the securities when you?
So, Madam Chair, at the change of ownership, the securities were renewed by the new owner.
Okay.
And the securities previously provided were given back to the previous owner. So we are up to date with the owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay, so I have a resolution here, moved by Councillor Bray, seconded by Councillor Belanger. Resolved that the Development Services Section of Coordinated Committee receives the Public Works Engineering Project Status Report dated March 7th, 2018 for information.
Madam Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bartolci. Okay, she's going to step back. Then, Madam Chair, we have a community interest forum. Councillor Bray,
In favor?
Councillor Ego,
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell,
Favor.
Chair Smith.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 5 in favor and 0 opposed. It's noted in the minutes. So.
Okay, that's those two. Okay, Mark. And this meeting is in recess until we can set up for the general government portion of this coordinated community meeting.
No.
it's terrible service.
Review that isn't, never needs review that way.
Exactly.
It's hard, it's hard work.
Well, you better not let me say that or you won't get home.
Okay, we're gonna call this meeting back to order.
I'll do some profiling on you, Bill.
General government section, we had deputation petitions and presentations and public meetings. We have none. We have no pecuniary interest, to my knowledge, on this one, do we? Or the one, yeah, no. Unfinished business, there's 2 items, but I don't believe they're on the agenda for today. Other agency reports, none. And related to the consent agenda, there's been 4 items pulled. Item 5.4.3. Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, 6.4.1, item B. That's Director of Economic Development and Tourism report dated March 15th. We have item IX, CAO's report dated March 15, 2018. Wasaga Distribution Inc. and Wasaga Resource Services Inc. The stipend and meeting rates. We have, this is a new one now. So just, I have item CI, Deputy Treasurer's report dated March 15, 2018. 2017 Treasurer's Statement of Remuneration and Expenses paid to members of council and appointed board committee members.
Yeah.
And C, II, Deputy Treasurer report dated March 15, 2018. Mr. Dustin O'Hara, request for relief of the extra water and wastewater connection charge for 60 Schooner Drive. With that, we'll look at the motion moved by Sylvia Bray and seconded by Councillor Stockwell, I believe.
Councillor Smith.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Smith. Resolved that General Government Section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the March 15, 2018 consent agenda items 6.4.1 through 6.4.3 and that the recommendations contained therein be adopted as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor.
Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Chair Belanger.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, the first item, oh, sorry. The first item pulled was moved by Councillor Smith and seconded by Councillor Eagle. Resolved that the General Government Service Section of the Coordinated Committee receives a report on the Main Street revitalization funding announcement for information, and that was pulled by Mayor Smith. That was the first one on.
Maybe you just forgot to be.
Yeah.
So, in order.
That's, you just said.
Just check your.
5.
Yeah, so, yeah.
You did say,
That's it.
B is it?
That's correct.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to speak to this. I think it's great for the province, and it's great certainly for our community. If you, I'm sure everyone has had a chance to look at the letter from Minister Jeff Leal, the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, and the Ministry responsible for small business. And I think important to note a couple of quotes here from Mr. Leal. Main streets are the core of small rural communities and are homes to thousands of small businesses across the province. That's why our government is committed to ensuring that they continue to remain vibrant hubs where residents meet, tourist visits, and small businesses grow and prosper. Jeff Leal. It's also, I won't go on and read them all, but there's a great, another great comment here from Lynn Dolan, the President of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and Deputy Mayor of Innisfil. And then again from Ronald Holman, who's the chair of the Rural Ontario Municipal Association and mayor of the township of Rideau Lakes. All levels of government, I think, understand how important main streets are to communities, that they are the heart and soul. And so as we move forward to revitalize, rebuild, or build our main street and revitalize our beachfront, this is just another step, I think, in the right direction to help us do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further comments? Councillor Bray?
Just a comment, I'm not sure when, what period we have to spend that money, because it would determine, I guess, what we identify as the main street, seeing as we don't technically have one at this point. I just wonder where those funds would be spent if there's a short spending window.
I'll refer that to our Director of Economic Development.
Yes, through the chair. The criteria, I actually just got an email, well, just before I walked down to this room. The criteria is going to be announced next week, and the notice is going to come to municipalities. So that'll allow us to understand what they're looking for. Given the fact that council has already identified a downtown and a Main Street location, I think we're fine to meet the criteria. We already have a street that's called Main Street, so I don't think there'll be any issue with satisfying that.
Any further comments? Okay, then the motion's already been read. I'll call for a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having no question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Eagle.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith. In favor. Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Chair Belanger.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, the second item pulled was moved by Councillor Smith and seconded by Councillor Eagle. Resolved that the General Government Section of Coordinating Committee recommend to Council that it approve the following monthly stipends and meeting rates for the Wasaga Distribution Inc. and Wasaga Resource Services Inc. effective January 1st, 2016. Do I need to read all the numbers or anything?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll name the positions and the amounts. So for September 2016, stipend for chair was 500, directors 400, and meetings 225. September 2017, chair 563, directors 450, and meetings 250. September 2018, the chair 625, directors 500, and meetings 275. Further, that the council confirm the stipends and the meeting rates paid to the chair and the board members of Wasaga Resources Inc. and Wasaga Resource Services Inc. for the period January 1999 to December 2015. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I'm not going to blindly support a report where, once again, due to concerns about confidentiality are being thrown at us. We're being denied access to a report that these numbers are based on. As the sole shareholders, I think that they should have a right to read that. So for myself, without all the information before me, I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes. So, Councillor Bray?
And just further to that, I have a hard time supporting a report that goes retroactive without a little more information and without the history and without access to that information.
Okay, any further comments? Okay, having the motion be read, we'll call for a vote.
Thank you. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
Opposed?
Councillor Eagle.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith. In favor. Councillor Stockwell.
Favor.
Chair Belanger.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
The next item pulled was moved by Councillor Bray and seconded by Councillor Smith. Resolved that the General Government Service Section of Coordinated Committee recommend to Council that it receive for information the 2017 annual statement of remuneration and expenses paid to members of council and appointed board committee members. And that was pulled by Councillor Stockwell.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, This is an annual report we get from the Treasury Department that gives the public information as to what remunerations and benefits and conferences and what have you, as well as cellular phones for members of council. Each year I look at this, and each year I say to myself, you know, I don't understand. Well, I do understand. I don't agree with the collective group of councillors having one group get paid one amount of money and a few get more than that amount of money. I think that we're all doing the same job. We should be getting the same salaries. Now, I understand how it works. I'm quite familiar with that. It all comes out to the meeting and the conferences. The benefits, this is where I find it confusing. The benefits are not the same. 3 get $5,879.09 and 2 get more than that. And then the conferences, I guess, are different as well. Now, I understand that I can't, this is just for information, but I just want to put council on notice that I will be bringing forward a notice of motion that says that we go back to the point that equal pay for equal work, and that the members of council elected as councillors all receive the same remuneration. Now, I'll put that forward to the upcoming council meeting, and then we'll have to go through the process to get it on the floor and debate it. I just think it's the only fair thing that should be done, and as I say, I'll speak further at the time I put the notice of motion.
Councillor Bray, or sorry, Councillor Smith was first, and then Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question I have on the report with the other expenses, for example, the mayor and the deputy mayor. Why county council remuneration is not included in there? Because that is another thing, and I think county committee people also get paid for attending committees at the county, and I would like to see a breakdown of those numbers as well.
Okay, Councillor Bray. Oh, sorry, CAO, I think he wants to make a point of clarification.
Thank you, and just on that particular question, Mr. Chair, it's not included here because the county does their own report to the county council with respect to county councillors, because in that role they're performing their county responsibilities. So I haven't seen that report. I don't know if the two members know if it was on this past week's agenda at county council. So from that standpoint, that's why it doesn't appear, because it's reported up through the county.
But I would like to see it as, you know, they're representing the town, and it would be nice to see what the extra compensation is for those individuals and attending meetings through the county. I think it's important. We get the NGCA report, what's being paid, and I think we need to get, it's just something I thought was important.
Okay, any other comments? I just have a question of clarification. I believe when they talk about benefits, is the variance due because of actual usage, or?
So benefits are different because some members pay CPP and others do not, so that makes a difference right off. The normal CPP for a year is about $1,100 that the town has to match the employee, or in this case, council. And then there could be a difference if people have family coverage or single coverage, and also if they are entitled to life insurance. So after a certain age, the life insurance comes off, but the town has covered them under a different package, which is not included in here because we're self-funded for that.
So if I'm reading that correctly, then this is very equitable compared to, like, everybody is getting the same thing when it's related to benefits. There's just reasons for variance.
Correct.
Councillor Bray?
Thank you. I had a comment. I think Councillor Stockwell's statement was misleading. I do believe that councillors are paid equal pay for equal work. Some might choose to attend different conferences, to attend seminars. You see that in the meeting and conference expenses. The only one exception, and I'm not sure why the town does this, is that if anyone claims a per diem, which is included within our expense policy, that it shows up under remuneration instead of a meeting and conference expense. So you only claim that expense if you're at a meeting and conference, but for whatever reason it shows up under remuneration. I think if you took that out, you would notice that all the remuneration for councillors is one amount, and then of course the mayor and the deputy mayor are different as per the salary grid that we've set for those positions. So I think it was a very misleading statement. We are being paid equal amounts for work of equal value. Some of us do different work, perhaps. Some of us, claim different things, but it's all within the expense policy, and to hint that it might not be isn't fair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm not arguing about the amount of pay. I know that the policy is there, and it's being paid as per the policy. My point is, it's a bad policy, and I'll be recommending through a notice of motion that it be ceased. Because as far as I am concerned, when you look at the list of remunerations, and 4 councillors are being paid one amount, and 1 councillor is being paying roughly $1,500 more. Now, I'm not arguing the fact that it isn't deserved under the policy. I say the policy is wrong, and it should be changed.
Councillor Grant?
Just my final comment on the issue, because I don't want to debate it. I don't think there's anything to debate. The difference between the councillor total remuneration is $20 between the highest and the second highest, so I'm not sure that there's a big issue here. But
$20.
We'll move on.
Mr. Chair, I read it that there's 4 people getting $21,068.57, and there's one getting $22,508.57. Now that's more than $20. Tell me where I'm wrong.
There was an amendment to this report. Do you have the correct version?
Yes, I think the amended report was $21,788.57, but it's still not $20. But that's neither here nor there.
No, again, I say, we really can't get into the debate today, but I'll be putting a notice of motion, and we'll bring it to the floor.
We'll deal with that at that time.
Excuse me.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I make a motion regarding the county remuneration? Do I need to make a motion or just ask staff to report back on that? Just a point of order.
I'll refer to the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was a public document that was on the county council agenda. I'd be happy to obtain it, copy it, and provide it to members of council. It was, as I said, a public document, so
Okay, thank
if
you.
that suffices.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, and motion now already been read, we'll call for a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor.
Councillor Eagle.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair Belanger.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor. Thank you.
Okay, this is the last item that was pulled. And this was moved by Councillor Eagle and seconded by Councillor Smith. Resolved that the General Government Service Section of Coordinated Committee recommends to Council that it not grant relief for the total estimated amount of $6,921.92 for the extra water and wastewater connection that was provided to 60 Schooner Drive. I believe there were 2 people pulled this, but Mayor Smith was first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess my question is, let me clarify. The property was sold to a new owner, and of course, I'm hopeful that the new owner's lawyer would have advised him of this charge on their on their taxes for the second connection that the previous owner requested. I guess my question, however, to staff is, and hopefully Kathy can answer us here, when, you know, if this was Mosley Street or River Road East, anywhere away from a waterway, I would have no concern or question here. The fact that it's on Schooner Drive, which backs onto the Wasaga River, and the same would apply if it was Oxbow Park Drive or Knox Road East or wherever there's property that backs onto water such as the Wasaga River. Should staff not have known, or did they have any inclination that the possibility of a second permit or a severance being done to this property, or any other property for that matter, would be pretty tough to have to accomplish based on, you know, the rules of the NVCA and of course the MNRF and whatnot? I guess what I'm saying is, if a property owner comes to the town when we're installing water and sewers, and they're in any area that there's going to be a fairly major issue with trying to sever, take a lot off, or put in a second home, that we are making that very clear to them. And now at that point, you know, if we say, look, the chances of you getting this property severed and building a second home here are very, very slim, and we make that clear to them, and I think we should do that in writing. And they decide we're going to go ahead with this, then they pay what they pay, and, you know, they pays their monies, they takes their chances. But in this case, I'm not so sure, and I could be wrong, that the property owners, although I have read the report, that it was made abundantly clear that this was going to be a tough one based on where the property is. And so I just want to make sure moving forward that we're not, I don't want to use the word allowing, but we're not encouraging or making clear to people who think that a second connection would be great, when in fact they're not going to be able to do with anything with that connection as they move further down the road because of water issues and being on waterfront. So I'm a little torn on this based on what I've read and what I see. I have no issue with granting relief on this, but I'd like to hear more from staff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. My only concern with the town taking a stand saying it might be really difficult, or no, it's a really good idea, is we're then making the decision. If a letter was to go out, I would hope that it would only say, you are on the river, please check with the NVCA to assist you with making that decision. The other thing is, you know, I will be supporting the motion that staff have put forward. If council was to vote against this recommendation, would we be setting a precedent that would affect us throughout town on other situations? I'm asking staff.
Through the chair, I would think that the town would be, and you know, there could be a lot of them out there that has had a second connection put in that hasn't been able to be used yet over the years. In the letter that did go out to the owners in that area, which went out on July the 9th, 2013, it does say that property owners are afforded an opportunity to request extra connections for future development / building permits through the planning process. And then further on, and it says that if you don't take a connection today, there is a $25,000 penalty if you want to put one in within 10 years. And then further it says property owners are hereby advised that the granting of additional or any services to their property does not guarantee that a building permit will be granted for any future additions and or new dwellings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to that point, I mean, this is clearly a street in an area we know that backs on the river, that we know as a town, or ought to have known at that time or any time, that, you know, there's going to be some major issues in trying to get another permit or a severance if you're going to build on the water. Back then, and even more so today. So, you know, the fact that we even solicit, I guess, for lack of a better term, to the property owners along these types of roadways where there's issues, to say, you know, if you want a second one, we'll give it to you, and if you don't take it, then it's going to cost you a lot more later. I just think that that's somewhat was an unfair thing to do to property owners when we ought to have known that anything you want to do on the Wasaga River on Georgian Bay is problematic. And that's my point. I understand that, are we setting a precedent? I get that. But if we've misstepped somewhere along the way, then we've misstepped. And so I don't want to open a big can of worms here, but at the end of the day, why would we even solicit this to people when we know that the property that they own or the area we're working on is going to be problematic with respect to what it is we're basically soliciting when we send a letter out to them?
I have some comments, but I believe the CAO would like to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to the Mayor's comments, that letter that the Deputy Treasurer is referring to is a standard letter that we use. That was issued as part of the Knox Road East servicing. So there were parts of that area that would be eligible, those properties would be eligible for a severance, and there were others that would not. Basically, the intent of the letter is to advise the owner that here's an opportunity. However, you better check to make sure that, you know, before you ask for a second set of services, that from a planning perspective that you're able to do what you want. I can't judge what the previous owner in their thinking in terms of what they decided to do, but obviously they took advantage of the opportunity and said they have to pay for it, but ask for the second service. I don't know what due diligence they did. This, however, is the second owner that's come along, and they're in this predicament where they've decided to act on it, and they have found out that there are some challenges at this point in time in terms of seeing their lot develop. It's the second owner that we're dealing with. But just to the Mayor's point, this is the standard letter that we would send out, and I've had a few calls from people over the years because this type of letter has been sent out in various areas that we've serviced, and I've always encouraged the individuals to check with our planning department, go to our planning department, find out what the current rules are, and our planning department has responded to numerous people, and they make a decision one way or the other based on that information. Thank you, Mr.
Councilor Bray first, and then Mayor Smith.
Thank you. I do think that this could be seen as a precedent-setting decision, so I understand staff's concerns. And then I also question how different this is from the discussion we had earlier this morning about the sign bylaw, where people will buy a business and maybe put up a sign and then be told, oh, you can't have that sign. There's a bylaw in place that prevents you from doing that, or you should have known that before you bought that sign and you put that sign up, or you installed that new digital whatever. So I think we just have to really respect staff's recommendation when it comes to precedent setting, because it really does ripple throughout the community and could be very costly.
Mayor Smith.
Thank you. Let me be very clear, Mr. Chair, that I plan to support the recommendation. My point is this. In future, we need to really be cognizant and look at the letters we're sending out and what we're saying or telling people. I understand the CAO, and I agree. This was for Knox Road East and that development. There are properties there, but if there are properties within that area that are considerably different because they're backing onto water, then I think we need to go a little bit further. As I said in my first initial comments here, this is the second owner, and his lawyer or her lawyer, their lawyer, ought to have made them aware of this. And so it's caveat emptor, buyer beware. This is what you're getting. Their lawyer should have made them aware of that. So it is what it is. But as we move forward and we do these types of projects in other areas, if they're in an area where we know for certain that there's problems when you want to build a second residence or have a second connection, that we take that extra step when those folks come in and say this is what we want to do, in writing of course, and we're not making recommendations, we're not telling them what to do. We're saying, we want to make sure in your best interest that you understand this very, very well. Because my thoughts are that the average individual, if they decide to spend this kind of money, it's probably because they believe they're going to have an opportunity to have a second lot or another dwelling. That is my point. Thank you.
If there's no further comments, I'm just going to make a couple comments of my understanding of reading through, and that's one of the reasons that I followed up and asked about granny suites, because the issue is not the floodplain. The issue is the erosion or the change and meandering of the river over time, I guess. So my thought was, could they make use of this connection with a smaller dwelling that may be approved? But of course, we already spoke to that. But as I read through it, there was, in my understanding, is the previous owner had investigated severance and was clearly told by the NCBA that they felt there would be a problem, but if you wanted to pay for the engineering reports on your own dime, go ahead, but it's not a guarantee that you would get the severance granted. So I don't know in a search of a property whether that information would be available. Certainly they should have known that there was a second connection and if there was money owing on it. They should have been aware of that. So I agree. I believe that the second owner went into this purchase with their eyes pretty wide open, and I'm going to support the staff recommendations. So if there's no further comments, the motion's already been read, and I'll call for a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having heard the question, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Bray.
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Byfolchi.
In favor?
Councillor Ego.
In favor.
Councillor Smith.
In favor.
Mayor Smith.
In favor?
Councillor Stockwell.
In favor.
Chair Belanger.
In favor?
Thank you. The motion carries on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
That's it.
Thank you. So just go through the next meeting.
Okay, so the date of the next meeting is April 12th, 2018, back here. Closed sessions, we have none. Report from closed sessions, none, so this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.